Hello again, and thank you for tuning into my YouTube channel. My name is Deepa Robbins from DeeZinesByD, and today I'm going to be showing you part one in a series of videos called Using Inspiration and Making It Your Own. And the point of this series is to basically show you how to use inspiration, which can be anything that you've gotten maybe out of a card magazine or online from YouTube videos, anything like that, and basically copy or learn the technique that's being shown or being used in this card or inspiration and use that technique, tweak it a little bit, move things around a bit, and basically make a unique item that you can actually call your own and look similar but not the same. It's not a direct copy. So the first thing that you want to do is find inspiration, and you can do this in many different ways. I actually chose to use a YouTube video and Pinterest pictures from Jennifer McGuire to use this card here as inspiration. So I'm actually going to be using her spotlight stamping technique in producing my own card. So one of the first things that you can do to make your card your own is change the main flower or your main focal image. Now Jennifer McGuire used a rose, but I'm going to use the Craft a Flower Anemone layering die set by Altenew. And the first thing that I did was that I cut out all of my layers with this die set using white cardstock. And I decided to do that because I wanted to color my layers with the ink sets from Altenew. In this case, I used the Tea Party set to do the 3 layers of the of the anemone. Now, the second thing you can do to make your card your own is change the medium. Now, Jennifer McGuire, she used stamping in the entire production of her card, but I decided that I wanted that main focal flower to stand out a little more. Plus I really liked this die set, so I decided I was going to do some die cutting here. So I'm going to go ahead and continue coloring all these pieces of cardstock with the Tea Party Altenew Crisp Dye inks. And this is also another way to change your card and make it your own, is to use a different color scheme. So I chose the coral colors for my flower, and I decided to use the Altenew Green Meadows Crisp Dye ink set for my leaves. And then I went ahead and colored the centers of my flowers with Altenew Milk Chocolate Crisp Dye ink from Altenew as well. And I used this Artist Tack dry adhesive. I've shown this in a few of my other videos before. And what you basically do is you put your die cuts that you want to adhere to together onto this dry adhesive. It has a release paper, and basically you lift up your release paper, put your die cut in, and then you kind of press down on the back so that it picks up the dry adhesive. And then when you pick up the die cut like I am here, it basically has that adhesive stuck to the back. So it's kind of like a sticker, which I find comes in handy when using these Craft a Flower layering sets or any type of layering dies, because especially when your die cuts are very intricate, this just makes it much easier. Now the Altenew Craft a Flower sets do come with a layering guide, so that helps to put these together, but I find that they're very lax in that they don't have to be put together in an exact specific way. You can make one leaf one way and another leaf another way, and that's just part of the crafting experience. This enables you to make more unique items such that they're not all identical. So here's what you end up with. These are the 2 leaves and the 2 flowers that I'm going to be using as my focal point. So another way to make your card your own is to change the orientation of it. Very simple. So Jennifer's card was a portrait, and I'm going to be using a landscape. And not only is that a way to make your card unique and your own, but you can also change the type of card you're making or the size of card you're making. So in this case, I chose to make a slimline card, while Jennifer McGuire chose to make, I think it was just like a normal A2 sized card. So it's definitely going to have a completely different look. So right here, all I'm doing is kind of arranging my focal point, my flowers, on one side of the cardstock, And I'm going to be using this die here, this beautiful die, which actually comes from the C9 Botanical Turnabout set. And I'm showing you some press and seal. Now, I've seen people use this before, and I was just like, oh, that's kind of cool, but didn't realize what a game changer it actually is. So I just arranged my floral elements there for my focal point, and I picked it up with the press and seal very carefully. And now I'm taping that together. So all I have to do is kind of gently remove the press and seal, and I basically have like one die cut here, or you can consider it one die cut that I'm going to put on my card right there. So I don't have to mess around with it too much. Now the first step here is to use some masking paper, and this is some Inkadoo stamping mask paper. It has a white portion and a release paper on the back. And I'm using this Altenew Hope stamp set. And I'm really hoping that it is an anemone in this set. I figure it does kind of look like the anemone flower that I use from the Craft a Flower set. So I'm hoping I did this correctly, but if not, it's no big deal. And I find this is a real plus with the Altenew sets because they do have stamping and die sets and some stencils I find that are of the same flower. So it's really easy to mix and match the different mediums with the same flower. So now I'm lining up my focal point, and I'm going to stamp out some of the buds because I kind of wanted to add that to my focal point, and I don't have dies for it. So the best thing to do is to stamp it in the same vibrant colors that I'm using for the focal point flower here. So I'll just stamp those out in the same Green Meadows ink set colors from Altenew. And you'll notice that I have to stamp the centers here. So for the centers, I didn't use the lightest color, the pink pearl. Instead, I decided to use the Coral Bliss and then the darkest color, which is the Vineyard Berry. And within this set, I chose to use these three colors, and I sort of opted not to use the Heartbeat Red because it was just too red. I wanted more of a coral color versus a reddish pinkish color. So that's how the final bud looks. And I'll go ahead and continue with the spotlight stamping. So here's another step or another way that you can make your card your own is you can tweak your technique. So with Jennifer McGuire's card, she used spotlight stamping, which is exactly what I'm doing, but when she did her background stamping, she used second generation stamping. And if you're not familiar with it, second generation stamping is basically where you ink up your stamp off the excess ink, and then stamp it again on your paper so that you get a lighter image, second generation image. Now I decided, because I was a little lazy and I wanted it to be a bit more vibrant, that I wasn't going to do just second generation stamping. I was just going to do simple stamping, and I'm going to actually just use the lightest colors from both of these lines of ink sets. So I went with Minty Mint for the green, and then the pink pearl for the color of the flower. And I'm really doing this in the same way that Jennifer McGuire did, is I'm stamping my flower, I'll then mask it, and then I'll stamp out the leaf, mask, stamp out a bud, mask, and continue on until I fill up my entire background here. So this was not really too hard to do, but you will notice that my mask is getting a bit covered in ink there. And I find that sometimes you might actually want to cut a couple masks at the same time because you might need to use more than one, because eventually that dye ink will bleed through your mask and it might mess up your stamping. So when you do your fussy cutting and cutting out of your mask, go ahead and cut a couple extra just in case. So here is the final product that you end up with. And I'm gonna move on to die cutting my sentiment. So like I said, this is from the C9 Botanicals Turnabout set, And I'm going to be die cutting it from some Sizzix Rose Gold Glitter cardstock. Now I'm using my mini Sizzix die cutting machine here just because I can. This is a really neat little machine that you can keep on your tabletop and use anytime you need to. So I had a bit of issues getting that out, but I just went ahead and cut it with my X-Acto knife to get out all the little bits. So I'm actually going to turn to this Altenew Blooming Bouquet set, and as I'm showing you, there are these little dotted images. Now, in Jennifer's video, she actually does some of this little dotting around her flowers, but she does it with an alcohol marker that's close to the color of her ink. And I decided that I don't really have an alcohol marker that's close to this ink. Plus, I really wanted to use all my Altenew stamp sets, and I found that this one really came in handy because it already has all these dots already, and they're of varying sizes, which is perfect for this. So I went ahead and filled in all my little gaps and nooks and crannies with all of these little dots. And I used the pink pearl again so that it matches the lighter flowers in the background. So this I find is very important. I try my best to go through all of my stamp sets and kind of find all the little things that I need. And I guarantee you, if you take some time and do that yourself, you'll definitely find what you want, or you can fashion your stamps to work the way you want them to. So once that's all stamped out, I'll go ahead and place my floral image to kind of see what that looks like and my sentiment. So now I can actually attach that piece. So I'm going to use some Barely Art glue, which has become one of my favorites. And I'm just going to glue the back there and stick it on and add a bit of weight with an acrylic block so it lets the glue kind of set. Now I'll also need to go back in there and kind of glue the little parts of the flowers down to each other that I didn't do before. And here's another way to make the card your own. What you can do is change your sentiment. So not everybody has the same sentiments as what you may see in someone else's card. So go ahead and look at the sets that you have and use what you want. Again, Jennifer McGuire used stamping to stamp out her sentiment, and I'm going to use a combination of a die cut and some stamping. So right here, I'm going ahead and using some VersaFine Clair Nocturne Black ink, and I'm going to use that to stamp out the other portions of my sentiment, which is also from the C9 Botanicals Turnabout set. And I have some extra ink that went onto my stamping platform. It's important to wipe that off because I do have a bit of dimension with my flowers and I don't want the black to ruin my flowers there. So that's the final result after the sentiment's added. And I'm going to move on to the inside of my card, which is my biggest way that you can make your card unique. Decorate your card inside. If you do watch my videos or pay attention to my blog, you'll know that my main passion for making cards is decorating the inside. I try my best to show you card fronts that also have a matching inside because I personally believed that the card inside is also part of the outside. And I know people like to leave them blank, and that's totally fine. You can do that if you want. There's nothing wrong with it. But I personally can't leave it blank. I just feel like I haven't finished making the card. So I like to show you how I do my card insides and how to make those card insides fluid with your fronts. So this is what I did for this card, and I highly recommend doing it yourself. Even if you like to stamp one little image on the inside, it definitely makes a huge difference and it will totally wow your recipients. So for the inside of my card, I went ahead and basically did what Jennifer McGuire did on the front of her card. So I used the Hope stamp set from Altenew to kind of stamp a focal flower or a focal point flower, and then I stamped the background. Now here I wanted to share a tip with you, which is to re-ink your ink pads when they're dry just before you do freehand stamping. And the reason for this is that when you're using a stamp positioner like a Misty, you can stamp your stamp out multiple times, re-inking it as much as you want to make your stamped image brighter. But when you are freehand stamping, you can do multiple stamping, but the chances of you messing up your image are much greater. So when you re-ink your pad and it's nice and juicy, it's easier when you're freehand stamping to get a crisp image the first time. Now, I also wanted to share another tip, which is to store your re-inkers in this Tim Holtz alcohol ink tin. And the best part about this is these Altenew re-inkers and a lot of re-inkers basically fit right in here perfectly. And when you close this, it is literally like airtight. So it's less likely that your inks are going to end up evaporating or drying out or anything like that. So I definitely do recommend that Tim Holtz tin for alcohol inks for your reinkers. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and continue to finish the inside of my card. So as I said before, I'm going to continue to use the same method and mask my flowers and stamp out the leaves. And I'm only going to be using one layer here. So I'm using the most solid layer for the leaves and the second most solid layer for the flowers. And I added the little dots on the front of the card, but I kind of decided not to do that on the inside just because I kind of wanted those flowers to lead into the white in the background there and then kind of lead you to the sentiment, which I'm going to be stamping out in just a minute. Sorry, my head gets a little bit in the way there. So the next thing I'm going to do is turn to my Say It With Love Altenew stamp set, which I totally love. I'm using this birthday sentiment here. And again, I've shown this in other videos, but I thought I'd show it again. This stamp set's very cool. As I've said before, it's got printed text and then it's also got some handwriting text. And I really like that handwriting text to stand out. So what I do is I add some washi tape to the handwritten text so that it's basically masked before I stamp. And what I'm gonna do once that's done is stamp the printed sentiment or the printed text in the black Nocturne ink by VersaFine Claire and remove my little washi tape masks, and then I will stamp that down onto my card inside. And I actually do that a couple times here, which is the benefit of using the stamp positioner because my ink was just a little bit dry. And then the next thing that I did was I washi taped up all of the printed text. And now I'm just using that Coral Bliss to get that handwritten text, which is the you and joy there. So I'll go ahead and stamp those down and you'll see that it really makes that sentiment stand out and it makes it match with the rest of my color scheme, which is also an added plus and a way to make that stamp unique. So I'm going to turn to the Altenew Dotted Blooms stamp set, and it has a nice happy birthday sentiment, which also has a typed up happy and a handwritten birthday, which sort of follows the same kind of idea as the Say It With Love sentiment that I put on there. So I stamped that in the exact same fashion with the black in print and the handwritten birthday in the Coral Bliss. And that was my final product. And as always, I'm going to jazz up the front of my card with some Amazon lolly beads in rose gold. I've shown this on past videos. These lolly beads are actually nail art gems, and you can look them up on Amazon. I know for sure you can get them in Canada. Most likely you can get them in the US. Just go ahead, type that in, lolly beads or nail art gems or something along those lines, but you're definitely not going to find them under card making. They're very nice, they're very shiny, and they make such a huge difference on your card. Then I decided I wanted to add this Nuvo Jewel Drops in Rose Watercolor. I realized afterwards that I really could have used this as my dots to fill in the blank areas, but I really wanted to use it, so I did make a few little dots around my card. And I found that this rose watercolor works very well with the coral set of inks or the Tea Party set of inks from Altenew. So I just added all my little dots there. And it's important to note that you have to let those kind of dry overnight so that they're nice and solid. So there's my card front. And there's my inside. And as you can see here in this little comparison, the Jennifer Maguire card looks completely different from mine. I took her technique, I learned it, and I basically applied it to my own with a few little tweaks. So let's go over what we learned. First of all, you want to find some inspiration. Use Pinterest, Facebook groups, a Google search, or YouTube videos like I did. And then step 2 is make it your own. You can do this by changing the flower or the focal image, or you can change the positioning of the images or the sentiments. Maybe you want it at the top, the bottom, left, or right. It makes a big difference. Another thing you can do is to change the medium. Nowadays we have ink, watercolors, alcohol markers, colored pencils. There's so many different mediums that you can use. Then the other thing you can do is to change your color scheme. There are so many different color schemes out there. There are even color scheme generators. Go ahead and type that in Google. You'll definitely find something different to use. The other thing you can do is you can change the card size, the type, and or the orientation of the card, which ranges from an A7 to an A2 card, a slimline card, a square card. Anything like that totally changes the card and makes it your own. Another thing you can do is change the technique. Like in this card, instead of using just stamping, I added some die cutting to it. And maybe you want to add some heat embossing or even tweak your technique just like I did with the second generation stamping. The other big thing you can do is decorate your card insides. I can't say it enough. It makes a big difference. And the last thing you want to do is mix and match. The varieties and possibilities are completely endless. And I do want to mention that specifically for Altenew or amongst some other stamp companies, there are a lot of different flowers or types of flowers that are made somewhat the same or similar between stamps, stencils, and dies. So go ahead and use those together to get different looks on your cards. And so I hope that these pointers and techniques sort of help you in taking inspiration and making it your own. I do hope to have some more videos like this so that it can help you sort of do what I did here and be unique in your art. Now I do want to apologize for the little errors and for also sounding very tired in this video and doing things like that and slurring my words, but I do have to do a lot of my recordings at nighttime because the kids are running around during the day. I hope there was something you liked. If you did, please give me a like, a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell so that you're notified anytime that I post another video. And if you get a chance, please have a look at my blog. There's a link here and also down below. And you can also click on a couple of these other videos here that you might want to take a look at and get inspired by. Once again, thank you for watching my video, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks. Bye.